Hi, my name's Tony English, and I want to do a video about evidence for the existence of God, quote unquote existence. I talk to a lot of atheists a lot of times, and they say, well, "Prove to me that God exists." Okay, so but before I get to that point, I want to dedicate this to my two grandsons, Lawson Honor, and my son Logan. So hopefully someday they'll be watching these. I'm going to start doing these videos to make some logical, scientific arguments for the existence of God. Um, so let's start out talking about contingency versus necessary. Things that exist contingent are things that may exist and may not exist. Like we could say a unicorn exists contingently. It's logically possible for a unicorn to exist, yet likely they don't. Um, turtles. Turtles exist, but it's logically possible that there could have been no turtles in the universe. So but something that's necessarily existing is something that has to exist, and it cannot not exist. So I'll get to that in a minute. But let's move out from unicorns and turtles. Let's talk about the entire universe. It's very clear that the universe itself is contingent because to be necessary, it has to be where it cannot be anything different. It has to exist necessarily. So the universe is a contingent object. And science backs that up. I mean, we have the singularity where they call it an infinitely small point. And what people don't understand a lot of times is this is a very significant scientific finding because it means that all space and time, matter and energy, all had a beginning. Time is a pretty radical thing to think of as having a beginning, but it has to have had a beginning. Otherwise, if it was eternal, we'd never get here. That's a whole nother video. Someday I'll do that. But if you think of the universe as logically contingent, then let's go into a thought experiment. We'll go back into time, and let's say the universe did not exist. Because if it's contingent, it may exist or may not exist, like a unicorn or a turtle. So the universe, let's pretend it never existed. Okay, so that means nothing exists. Nothing is a word that has lots of meanings, but let's say that nothing exists. Well, can nothing exist? So there's some things that are non-physical that exist, like logic, like mathematics, like truth, and like existence. So let me get there in a minute. So let's start with logic. Is it logically possible that logic could not exist? In other words, is logic necessary or is it contingent? So what we would ask is it logically possible that logic doesn't exist? Well, that's a self-refuting question because you have to use logic to figure out whether it's logically possible. So the fact that you have to do that proves that logic is a necessary part of reality. You cannot not have logic. The A equals B if B equals A. The law of identity, the laws of logic are necessary. They have to exist. They cannot not exist. Even if the universe, matter, space, time, and energy didn't exist, logic would still exist. Mathematics, 2 plus 2 equals 4. If nothing exists, that truth is still true. It's still a true statement, a true thought, a true object that 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's a necessary truth. It cannot be different. You can't have 2 plus 2 equals 5 in 3 dimensions. So let's think about that now. Okay, so there's no universe. People say, well, then there's no need for a cause, no need for God. Wait a minute. Things like logic and mathematics and truth don't exist in rocks and energy and matter and time and space. They exist in a mind. So a mind has to exist necessarily. There has to be a mind at the ground of reality. And so there has to be some necessary reality since there is a reality that we exist in. Since the universe does exist and we see it's contingent, there has to be some explanation that's necessary. And remember, necessary is something that cannot not exist. So now let's talk about existence. People say, prove to me that God exists. Existence itself is part of the nature of this mind that's at the center of reality. Existence is part of his nature. He cannot not exist. It's impossible for God to not exist. If he exists, it's impossible for him not to exist. But the fact that we know that logic has to exist, truth and math have to exist, so existence exists. So that's the point I want to make. So you cannot have any other answer to this question. I mean, it's a very simple thought experiment that proves that existence exists, truth exists, math exists, logic exists, and other things like love, we could argue, exists, purpose, values, morals. These are things that are non-physical things that objectively must exist. So next time someone says to you, prove to me that God exists, don't start with God, start with existence. They have to answer, how do we explain that there is existence itself? And the only way to explain it is that there is a God, and that is grounded in who he is. He doesn't cause existence. He doesn't subject himself to existence. Existence is part of his nature. It's who he is. Just like being perfect and all-knowing and all-powerful and all-loving and all-holy. These are part of his nature. Now, he has freedom to choose whether to create a universe or not. He has freedom to choose like any person. He's a personal mind. But if you think about mathematics, too, it's amazing in astrophysicists, they learned early on that they used to find things in nature and then find out there was a mathematical formula that matched. Then they started doing theoretical physics where they started looking at math to find out what may be in reality, and they matched it up a lot of times. Now, it doesn't always work, but it's amazing how they can use a mathematical equation that looks simple to them, not to non-mathematicians, but it's an elegant formulas that actually they go out and they find it matching in reality, in the physical reality. So mathematics is only found in a mind. It's not found in rocks and energy and matter. It's comes from a mind. So there you have it. Proof that God exists just by the word existence. See you later.